Okay, so let us move on to our topic today. Last time we talked more about mm, the habit of craving, right, for ourselves and for other tradition and so forth. Let's start with the habit of arrogance. So I read begin. Would you mind to read this one, please?
Oh, certainly, I'm happy to. The habit of arrogance. Arrogance grows into a habit because of abuse, which manifests by the oppression of others, which in time creates the illusion of restless waves, which build up a volume of water. This is like the licking one's mouth to make it water. The two habits from karma and arrogance stimulate each other and create visions of rivers of blood, hot ashes, burning sand, poisonous seas, and molten copper poured on the sinner's tongue. And so all Buddhas regard self-importance as the water of stupidity, and all bodhisattvas avoid it as they would drowning. Wow. Yeah, I certainly see myself sometimes getting excited by what I'm saying and not being as sensitive to the other people in the conversation.
Mm.
Like what I have to say is so interesting. Um, Even though I know from my experience that the real value is in staying in that relationship with the person in the conversation and being sensitive to listening and hearing and the balanced give and take. Um, and that's maybe like a part of the spectrum of arrogance, because arrogance can obviously be much more pronounced and developed. But I think like volume, it can be a quiet arrogance, or it can get louder and louder and louder until someone is actually, you know, uh, telling others they're worthless or something like that.
Mm. So the whole idea is the attachment to the cell, right? The cell here in Buddhist views include the five aggregates, right? The form, the feeling, the perception, the mental habitual pattern, and the consciousness, right? So, but if we are not mm, careful, uh, it's easy for other people to have misunderstanding about the idea of selflessness, so that we can transform the arrogance here. So let's say if someone have the problem with depression, so is it beneficial for them to understand Buddhist view of selflessness, or is harmful? What do you think?
If they understand it properly, I do think it's helpful.
But
I
most of
think
right, most of the time, I think as a doctor, I think you have seen many of them right before, right? So if we present the Buddhist idea of non-self to those patients, is it helpful for them in your experience?
um, perhaps if I guess I'm thinking in theory. But
Mm.
yeah, if I think in my actual experience, the way that I currently know how to present it, I see a possibility of another way. The way I currently know how to present it, I think I frequently miss the mark. I think I rush to the final conclusion too soon instead of grounding it in simple, more preparatory steps
Mhm.
and then building up to it so that it's that when it is seen, it's a sense of relief. Because yeah, I do think in my experience, just laying it out there, the conclusion at the outset, it doesn't feel like a doorway to people. It frequently feels like a wall that that is kind of confounding and and off-putting because it's misunderstood because the roots of it aren't first explained. And I think the reason that I'm always like how my knee jerk has historically been to get to the conclusion is because the conversation takes a while, I think, to ripen naturally.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I have a fear that it's never going to get there. Um, so yeah, I agree. I could see that it's not immediately. Do you want to read your book? Do you brush your teeth? You took your shower? Yeah. Okay. Uh, but I think in theory, if someone could grasp it, it would make sense that it could relieve their depression because depression also orbits around self.
Mm-hmm.
And like there's something wrong with me, there's something wrong with my life,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not good enough, or the world is this way to me. So it's yeah.
Yeah. Just, uh, I have not spoken this type of non-self to those people who have depression problem, but in my understanding and feeling, that's maybe not beneficial for them because at that moment, when they feel so down, when they want to even to the extreme way to terminate the life. So if we add on this type of non-self idea, I think this is be more harmful for them. You think so? But of
Hmm.
course, for the normal people, right? In a conversation for normal people, yes, you can present the non-self idea that whenever they step out to help other people without attaching to the self, they can help others without any condition. So they may understand the non-self in the positive way because they are in the stable condition. But for those unstable conditions, like the one that have depression, I don't know. That's my thinking. I have not encountered or present the idea of non-self to those people who have depression yet. Mm. So what do you think?
I've done it probably half a dozen times,
Okay.
and it didn't seem to lead to any harm,
Okay.
but it didn't seem to also achieve much of a result.
Hmm.
Um, I think like the development of the expedient means in this setting of understanding like what is the path they need to walk to be in a place where the idea of non-self is liberating
Mm-hmm.
and understanding like what needs to be gotten first. Um, like in ACT, pretty early on, they use the idea of self as context.
Mm-hmm.
You, that you taught, we lectured on that a while back.
Yeah.
And that seems like a pathway to understanding non-self, no self, without throwing it out on the table from the beginning, but like kind of loosening the grip on the self indirectly.
Mm. You remember we talked about MBCT, right?
Yes.
That's be helpful for the people who have depression. And one of the techniques is that just accept their condition, just recognize and accept their condition in mindful way. That's different from this CBT. You know CBT, right? Cognitive
Mhm.
behavioral therapy, right? Where they want to have the patient to think in opposite way, right? Instead of feel down, instead of feel so depressed, they try to uplift the patient in the positive way. But in reality, uh, the more we pour to the positive side, the more strength uh, it may pull back to the negative side. It's just it's like dividing back and forth between two poles. So in the MBCT, it you mentioned that no, you don't need to fight. Just accept that. Just accept that you have that type of mind. You just accept that you have that type of mm, understand thinking and move on. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, go back to arrogant. So I just spoke with Dr. Michael recently that uh, it's pretty hard to put in practice uh, when in the Whole Sutra it said that the Bodhisattva uh, when she observed the five skandhas, uh, of them are empty. So that's why she could overcome any kind of disaster and problems. But for us, most of the time, we get stuck with our own body. Let's say if someone hit us, even if we stumble uh, on the rock or the log, at that time it's so painful. We may complain, we may be angry. Not talking about if we've been by other people, not talking if we yell or scold or swear by other people because we have so much attachment to our even physical body and our feeling then. So the whole thing of the arrogant is they speak up the common people like us in one way and others. Right? Like you say that somehow, yeah, somehow we say something and we may be proud of what we try to present with that type of proud. We can see that it's deep down we have some kind of self-attachment there. It's not easy to overcome without observing or seeing the root of our own mind, right? Mm.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Mm. So in the practical case, in practical ways, even we know Buddhism and we practice so many years, even us, we could not transform much about the attachment to the self. How much more common people, if they don't understand about Buddhism, especially that they come from different tradition, or even they are non-religious people, they atheists. So how could they transform that type of idea? How could they transform this type of arrogance then? There's no hope. You think so?
Um, I think there are individuals who haven't been exposed to Buddhism who already do have a sense of humility. Like it's not really common, but commonly I would say, yeah, most people do have a very strong attachment to self, and the idea of no self is so far out there. There's no interest in understanding it. There's no like where to begin. It seems like some of those people can still get interested in things that could eventually lead them to no self, like just the breath practice. And that's, I think, one of the expedient means employed through like Zen, where it's okay, let's not even talk about it, let's not even think about it. We don't have to say what is what. Just feel your breathing, just stay with one thing without thought. And like in that, one can have gradually the experience of no self. Or like someone who is becomes totally absorbed in some sort of talent or craft, like a piano player.
Mm.
They did this study looking at the brain with a functional MRI, and they could see the parts of the brain that process ideas of self. And they can see when the brain is using those centers by the amount of blood that's going to those centers. And then there are these studies that showed when someone becomes so absorbed in some sort of practice, like a master piano player, that in order to like fully perform that practice, they stop sending resources to the part of the brain that processes thoughts of self.
Mm.
And they're just that's like they're in the experience of what is, and in that experience the self is not needed, and it's sort of like there's a flow that leads them out of it, of processing self. And then once they stop, right, self starts being processed again. um but if someone isn't like looking to protect the space for that to happen, then the chance of it really becoming established, I think, yeah, is incredibly low. I mean, even for those of us that do put some effort, you some more than others, of the people who put effort in the practice, it's still like you were saying, like the grass that just grows, like you move the rock and the grass grows again. As soon as mindfulness is not present, the pattern is right there, in my experience. So yeah, I think some people do seem to touch it through other means. Maybe they have past experience with practice in previous lives, but it seems like most people don't ever get to experience it, or experience it extremely rarely and don't really cognize what it is.
Yeah, so when we talk about non-self, like you mentioned recently that yeah, for the one who plays sport, whether volleyball, basketball, and so forth, or even when we are driving, when we're cooking, when we do something, if we are in tune with whichever we're doing, right, that means there's no cell that we attach to at that moment, right? So we get that type of the happiness moment of our life. According to some scientific research, they say that no matter what kind of things we do, as long as we are in tune with them, that is the special moment. That is the most happy moment for us. Whether cooking, walking, talking, drinking, chatting, and so forth. But if we somehow, while we talking, even cooking, if we are not in tune, we have a lot of worriness, we have a lot of stress, anxiety, and so forth. In one way, this is one way for our explanation. Another way is that uh, so remember the ACT, they talk about self at context, right? So we separate ourselves as being observer, not being engaged in the situation. I try to explain to the youth when it come across the idea of non-self in Buddhism. For them, that's not easy to understand. So I explain to them that as long as they take no, if as long as they don't take things as personal, they be safe. They more peaceful. For example, let's say if they fail the class, right? If they have only C or D on the test instead of having an A, right? At that moment, let's say if the parents find out and they may yell at them, "Hey, why you fail that class? Why you fail that test?" and so forth. If they take that yelling as personal, they think, "Oh, I'm so bad. I'm bad student now. I'm bad child now." They feel more depressed. But as long as they step back and they observe that, okay, the reason why my parents yell at me because I failed that test only, I may make it up. They don't yell at my personality. Don't nothing changed my personality or characteristics. Uh, I can make up the test later on, so they can move on because they see themselves as being absorber, not being absorbed into the yelling. That's what the ACT is about, the self-contest there. In one way that I try to explain to them in practical sense, otherwise it's not easy. It's not easy. So that's two ways, so right? Two way we can explain the non-self idea in Buddhist view. Otherwise, mm, yeah, even for some time, deep down, we have some kind of attachment to the self there, some kind of subtle arrogant there. With sometimes we could not recognize until we sit down and recognize our own thought, right?
Oh yeah, I think just by the fact that like I'll have conflict with my wife sometimes. You know, I wouldn't be in conflict if I wasn't attached to this idea of self. I wouldn't be upset about anything because it would all just be as it is. Um, so yeah, I think that's a really good test that I recognize is okay, if I'm having conflict with someone, then that's the evidence of that I have an attachment to self because there's that story of which of the Zen masters was it? Was it was it Hakuin? It wasn't Hakuin. One of the Zen masters who they that young woman who she had a baby with a boy she wasn't married to, and she blamed the Zen master. And so her parents took her to the Zen master with the baby and they criticized him and said, "How could you do this? Here, take your baby." And he just said, "Is that so?" And he
Mm-hmm.
accepted the baby and then he raised it. And then later the daughter confessed and she married that boy and she wanted to have her child back. So she went and told the truth. And then they went, she wanted her baby, so they went to get the baby back. They apologized to the master, and the master just said, "Is that so?"
Mm-hmm.
Like that level of non-attachment where because the fact that he didn't say anything about it not being his kid protected the young woman, but it also meant that everybody ridiculed him and he didn't get as much support as he would have. And so he lived a more difficult life. But to be so deep in the practice that it really didn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Like that he either way, it was like, okay, like like that's that's so impressive. To be able to be that way was such an extreme example. And I can see how I have trouble being that way with relatively mild examples.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. He way up there because he did not care much about his status, benefit and so forth. Right? No matter what people say, they say, "Is that so?" Right? For us, no way, no way for us to say that. If someone say something negatively about us on even on social media like Facebook and so forth, yeah, at first we will react in angry way, right? But for them, right, with that level, they recognize there's no sale at all, and where things could come and come whenever things come, could come. So there's no attachment to the sale. They're so at ease with that. Mm, yeah, that's why it's many. Yeah, I love Zen story because there's many Zen master. They're so at ease with other people or their environment or their condition. I don't know whether you remember the story that a Zen patriarch, I think he's the 21st or 22nd Zen patriarch. His yeah, his name is Lines. That translate into Vietnamese and Chinese. So I don't know whether you know that story. So I can ask for his head. You know that story?
I've heard of bodhisattva stories of kings like people asking for heads. I'm not sure if I know this one.
Yeah. So somehow because the Brahmin they jealous at him, and somehow they was in favor by a king. So the king invite the Zen master to the courthouse, to the courts, and the king asked, in Buddhism, it's so beautiful, it's so profound. Um, Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. There's no real self and so forth. So can you give me your head? And so the master smile and say, okay, that's fine. I can give you my head. No problem at all. You heard that story?
No, I don't think so.
So the king took out the sword and chopped off the head of the master. Somehow, of course, in Buddhist belief, somehow the blood came out of his body. It's not the blood, but all kind of the like the milk color of blood that sprint out of his body. And within 7 days, the king died because of his heavy karma that he killed the Zen master there. But anyway, the story speak about the easiness of the Zen master. He did not attach much about his body, but for us, it's not easy. Right? Even when someone take away a couple dollars, a couple $100, and so for other um, possessions or things from us, not talking about the body, right?
Hmm.
There's many story about that. Anyway, so come back here. Yeah, the idea of the non-self is so lofty and it's so hard to put in practice, even for us too, until we recognize our own nature and we see this body is just the mm, the forms and just the means for us to do the practice. Or in the Buddhist view, to get to outer shore, the outer shore awakening enlightenment. Otherwise, it's not easy to let go. It even this physical body, nothing about letting go of our perception, our thinking, our feeling, right? We used to say that when people say something, you say, "Oh, that hurt my feeling." Is that right? You're not talking about own thinking, and most of the time we want to dominate other people by um, demand them that they need to accept our views. This is all kind of attachment, all kind of self-attachment there, and that's why arrogance come about in different level, right? In the subtle level, in the coarse level. Yeah, for other people, when they so successful in their business or whichever, they pride themselves and they try to show up that they are a successful person and so forth. That's arrogant there. But in the uh on the surface level, but for us deep down, whenever we have some kind of conversation with other people or some kind of achievement, we feel that we achieve something else. That's what I think we can discuss next time. If we feel good about ourselves, especially the one that we have some kind of some kind of achievement, is that arrogant there? What do you think?
Hmm. It's interesting because sometimes we can get like growing up, we can get lessons that we're not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of like the opposite of arrogance can be imprinted upon us. And then there's this a natural response for a lot of people that would be to try to prove themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so an achievement may be something someone holds on to prove themselves, to say, I am good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and is that is that arrogance? I mean, it's delusion to believe initially that we are something that is not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but is that initial belief arrogance? No, because generally arrogance is that, I am something greater than others.
Mm-hmm.
If I fear that I'm something less than others, then that's like Yeah, it's like the opposite, the inversion of arrogance. It's the same sort of problem, whether we think we're greater or whether I mean, it's maybe not as problematic if we think we're less than in some senses. Usually, I know Master Swanhua would say that, if we, we think we're greater than someone else, then we know we're not. But if we think that if we don't think that we're greater, then maybe we are, you know? But we can't, there's no real like greater or less than anyone else. But so it seems like as much delusion either way. So holding on to an achievement, I think it depends like where we're coming from. If it's in response to feeling insecure, it's a little different than if it's just a desire to feel better than someone else.
Mm-hmm. Yes, since we're almost done with our time, so probably next time we talk about that. Right? That idea when we have some kind of achievement, we proud ourselves and we're pleased with ourselves, we're happy with that. And another thing, like you mentioned, that the two poles. One is we arrogant, that's when we want to show up, hey, I'm better than you. That's what we talk about arrogant. Another pole is as I'm not good. I I'm not good. I feel so down. That's mean I have low self-esteem, right? That's two pole, right? So how can we go in middle way? How can we adjust ourselves in middle way so that we would not fall in either way? So that mm, in life we can handle any situation, any circumstances. Mm, yeah. Okay. So yeah, let's just stop here today. Okay. And next week I think we can discuss two issues. The first one is when we feel that we achieve some things, is that good for us to feel good for ourselves? That's one. Another one is how to deal with low self-esteem. That's I think at the beginning we talk about depression, right? That's why I mentioned that if we talk more about the non-self for those kind of low self-esteem or those depression people, excuse me, like you saying you deal with top people, but somehow I feel that uh, uh, not much beneficial for them. Of course, for you, you can uh, see how to present it in the way that they understand properly, right? Mm.
And that's something I see the possibility of. Yeah, I don't know that I haven't quite achieved that to where there's a like a sense of relief from it.
All right, so thank you. I'll see you next week then. Thank you.
Um,
Yeah, thank you.